happen to remember when Andy Weidel, he's Omar Khan's assistant GM, was hilariously quoted as saying that one of the things he hoped to help achieve with this roster was to make them feel good about themselves coming off the bus at the stadium. Man, I love that. Good morning to you. Good Tuesday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Steelers. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into hockey and or baseball, I also happen to offer daily shots of Penguins and Pirates in the same place that you found this. The Steelers will resume practicing today after a 4-day break for the players following the loss in Cleveland. That's not the norm, by the way. Usually after Thursday games, Mike Tomlin will at least have everybody back in the building and doing something on that ensuing Monday. So maybe he saw something, maybe he felt something. Whatever the case, they're back at it today. And here's hoping they're back at it with, I don't know, some open-mindedness, I guess is the best way that I could word it. Because while I loved what Weidel meant when he said that, which is that they're so big, so tough, so strong that they'd feel scary walking into somebody else's place. I've also seen, I think, a little bit too much of that emphasis over the course of the schedule to date. I am not saying that just because of Cleveland. I'm saying that in a general sense that probably would consume the better part of the last 3 or 4 weeks. Because if we're being honest here, yes, the running game has had spurts where it has done that thing that Weidel envisioned, but it has not come against the stronger defensive fronts, and it has not come really against anybody until about late in the third quarter, even into the fourth. That's not a healthy way to exist. It's not progression. It's not the Steelers are a better rushing attack now than they were back in Atlanta in week 1. I don't believe, for the most part, that they are. I still see first down, predictable, handoff, 1 yard, 1.5 at the most. I still see the completely mind-numbing 2nd and 9 runs that'll get you at most another 1 or 2. And the principal reason for that, at least from my perspective, is that the offensive line isn't doing what it needs to do. And that, from a personnel standpoint, was what Weidel had in mind, was of course what Khan had in mind, was what everyone up to Art Rooney had in mind when they invested all of these high draft picks into the big boys up front. Well, the big boys up front aren't getting it done. And with very few exceptions, even through the winning, they haven't gotten it done. So what do you do? What do you do? And this is where it goes to the head coach if you're Mike Tomlin. Do you slam your forehead against a cement wall repeatedly and say, we've got to run, it's who we are, it's what we do, blah, 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 blah. Do you do that? Or do you try to find other ways to move the football while also continuing to work with your offensive line in hopes of making them better? As they get better, then get back to this. Get back to every first down being a run. Get back to, I don't know, not the 2nd and 9. Don't do that. But get back to being that team on the bus. For right now, I don't have any use for it. I really don't. I'm not going to have any use for it against the Bengals. I'm not going to have any use for it against the Browns in that sequel. I'm not going to have any use for it against Baltimore. I'm certainly not going to have any use for it against Philadelphia or Kansas City. You get the idea here. Okay, this is the whole, meat grinder portion of the schedule. And part of the reason for that is you're running into some teams that don't give up a whole heck of a lot on the ground. Now, just to be clear here, do I believe that the Steelers need to be a good rushing offense to succeed, meaning to win more of these games than they lose, meaning to, actually win a playoff game and so forth? Yes, they really do. I just don't believe it needs to come at the expense of winning the game that's right in front of you. In other words, if you've got 59 offensive snaps, which is, by the way, what the Steelers had in Cleveland. Where is it written that having 30 of those be runs is somehow better than having 20 of them be runs? Do you not think that the offensive line could find ways to improve within the framework of 20 runs from scrimmage? I do. I'll look at it another way. Do you not think that the Steelers have enough skill to move the ball through other means? I don't know that they have an abundance of skill, certainly not at the wide receiver position, but I would take more targets to George Pickens, and I'm guessing most everyone listening to this would be nodding when I say that. I would take more targets to Pat Freiermuth than the 2 or 3 that he's gotten in each of the past 5 games. Not making that up. I would take more targets to Darnell Washington. I'd throw the ball to Jaylen Warren in space. I'm not big on throwing to Najee Harris, just too many drops. But there are other things that you can do, and I'm not even mentioning the Justin Fields package. And no, by the way, Fields does not have to run the ball every time he comes into the huddle. This is a multi-talented quarterback, emphasis on quarterback. He could scare you in a lot of different ways, and nothing would scare you more than to have him heave it. Parentheses, not in the snow, as the pivotal play of the game, end parentheses. But if all everybody does is go into the building on the south side today and say, well, we're going to have to run the ball 35 to 40 times this week, so let's figure out how we can do that, then you're going to deserve what it is that you get, because this line's not there. This line's not ready. Stop pretending that it is. When we come back, J1Q. This segment of Daily Shot is brought to you by our good friends at Mike's Beer Bar. They're located on Federal Street, directly across from PNC Park. Mike has more than 500 beers on tap, including from more than 50 local breweries. Stop in and say hello. Tell Mike we sent you. Mike's Beer Bar. Today's J1Q, and it kind of fits with the theme, by happenstance, comes from Eric, who asks, DK, please explain to me what happened to the offensive line once Zach Frazier returned. You know, a question like this can prompt an answer that can get me in some trouble with some of you guys, okay? Because I could say what I want to say, and it's going to come across as seriously stupid. And in fact, it might be seriously stupid. But the best the Steelers have looked as a line, as a rushing attack, even in pass blocking, are the 2.5 games in which Ryan McCollum was at center. Now, I have asked people who know offensive line stuff, people who know the Steelers roster, people who are, let's just say that they're very familiar with the coach's thinking. Not the head coach, all of the coaches. Coaches, plural. And when I suggested such a concept, I was, and laughed at would be a little too strong, but I was dismissed out of hand. You're nuts. You're crazy. Watch what Frazier does. Watch the way he moves a guy 10 yards down the field. Watch the way he finishes. He's doing things that rookies shouldn't be able to do in the NFL. And I agree with all of that. So I acknowledge it. But then I'll ask the same question, kinda, that you did. You didn't mention McCollum, but that's what you're referring to, obviously. What was it that McCollum was doing? Because not only were the Steelers running effectively, they were doing so through the middle. To which I was told by one knowledgeable individual that McCollum, being a veteran, you can call him a journeyman, whatever term you choose, knows how to follow a script, knows how to work with the linemen around him, and knows, plain and simple, how to execute a play. To which my eyebrows went up as if to say, okay, and what's so bad about that? given some of what's been put on film by all the rest of these guys, as if they didn't know what the play was that was supposed to be executed. Well, you just don't do that, came the retort. You don't do that. Frazier is your guy. Frazier is okay. So that's the best I've got for you. They're not going to put McCollum back in. They're not going to teach McCollum a new position. A lot of the questions that come this way about him are, can he play guard or can he play tackle? He has been a center for all but the rarest exceptions over the course of his football life. That's his position. That's where he belongs. The Steelers did have McCollum take some snaps at guard in Latrobe, but nothing of any significance. It's the sort of thing they like to do with a lot of guys. They don't turn everybody into a Spencer Anderson, the jack of all trades, but they like to see some flexibility. They like to know that you can do something other than one thing, especially if you're not going to be a starter. So I don't have the answer that I'm thinking that you're looking for here, which is, oh yeah, he's the guy. He should be back in, and I'm going to start some big dust up over that. I don't know that. I do feel confident in saying that the Steelers looked at their best when he was there. Now, that also might have been the opponent. It also might have been to the credit of Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren. But, when I say that they should walk into that building today open-minded, I mean that they should be open-minded about everything. I appreciate the question. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Steelers. Going to do another one of these tomorrow.